Hey family, continuing our conversation on Sun Tzu's The Art of War, the brilliant Chinese military strategist. And again, apologies for the distortion and why the video is not HD. I still haven't figured it out. Okay, let's begin. We are in the area chapter segment of Attack by Stratagem. The general, unable to control his irritation, will launch his men to the assault like swarming ants. Okay, so swarming ants. Ants overpile somebody, right? They come all on, right? They're not as in like, think of the Roman way. The Roman way of military strategy was don't break the line and stay in formation. So you had your centurion and then you had your other legions, right? And then you had these like, let's say, like, I'll just make something up, like 6 soldiers here, 6 6 6 6, right, all the way back, all right, and then you have another column here, space between the lineup, line, centurion, right, and then that will continue, and then you have your other ones, your other leaders, right, your other generals in the military, and then you have here and boom, and then you have, let's say Caesar at the beginning, right, at the forefront. So when he says, swarming ants, that's more chaotic, right? Brilliant stuff. So it seems here he's saying unable to control his irritation, so quick to anger, like he doesn't have patience to withstand the art that is war, right? Remember, we're talking about, this is before somebody could send a drone from their tiny little cubicle, be like, hey. This is back when you actually had to face somebody, right? You couldn't just cower behind and use bombs out of the sky, right? You actually had to get up to your enemy. And, you didn't have, like, firearms. You had, this was much different. This was more brutal, more braver, in a sense. And, having a general who could maintain composure was very important to the success of a military campaign. So when he says, that the general will just say, go, charge, I don't care. And they'll be like, what's the orders? And he's like, just go. And then what are you going to do? And then everyone's like, I guess it's a free-for-all. I guess, what weapon do I use? Right? Instead, having someone who's on their horse and is like, all right, lock, knock, fire. Okay? And then somebody who can send the signal to the cavalry, go on the left, you, charge from the right? So it's different structure, right? Ants don't do that. They kind of just like, maybe we'll discover in the future through science that they do. But for as now, insect research has not shown us that they do. So, very fascinating stuff here. Oh, and he continues, with the result that 1/3 of his men are slain, while the town still remains untaken. Such are the disastrous effects of a siege. So he's saying here that you'll lose so much men swarming like ants, basically, and that'll be the consequences of the siege, right? I mean, and then you lose all those men, and you still haven't taken the town, right? Brilliant stuff here. And then he continues, therefore, the skillful leader subdues the enemy's troops without any fighting. He captures their cities without laying siege to them. He overthrows their kingdom without lengthy operations in the field. With his forces intact, he will dispute the mastery of the empire, and thus, without losing a man, his triumph will be complete. Again, swiftness is essential here, what we're getting at. Not too long. Get what you gotta do. Be organized. And then it continues, this is the method of attacking by stratagem, aka strategy, having a legitimate plan. It is the rule in war if our forces are 10 to the enemy's 1 to surround him, if 5 to 1 to attack him. A little arithmetic there. So, if you have 1 soldier and you got, let's say the enemy is 1 and you got 10 on that 1 soldier. You should surround them, right? And then because of your sheer numbers, they might toss down their swords, toss down their shields, and be like, we give up, okay? But if he's saying if you only have 5 soldiers to their 1 soldier, you got to get up on there because that's too close of an odd, right? That's a fighting chance. A slick warrior who can take down 3 men might be able to whack out those 3 and then finish off the remaining 2, right? I mean, back in these days, these soldiers would actually train all day, right? And there was great honor for soldiers. I mean, fascinating stuff. If twice as numerous, to divide our army into 2. So if they're twice as big, then you need to divide your army into 2 sects. Maybe that... I think that would be like, okay, pincer effect. Like, I remember in... Because... Do you remember, if you've watched Game of Thrones, what's brilliant about this show was, I swear George R. R. Martin, he must have read Sun Tzu's Art of War. Because when Stannis attacks the wildling army, the true king beyond the wall, right? He does, the wildlings are in the forest, and Stannis Baratheon shows up, but he doesn't just show up, my whole army with the whole army. He divides it in 2, and guess what? Okay, here's the wildlings in the middle, and then here comes Stannis. He divided his army in 2 to get him on both sides. So that is exactly what I think Sun Tzu is talking about, and that is, I believe, what they call a pincer move. You know? Holy moly, guacamole. Brilliant stuff here. And then he continues, if twice as numerous... Oh wait, no, we got that. If equally matched, we can offer battle. So if it's even, it's even. Only the God knows what's going to happen, right? Brilliant stuff here. If slightly inferior to numbers, we can avoid the enemy. So if he's saying that if you don't have as many, or they don't have as many, you can avoid battle. And then I think that you use cleverness in this case. If quite unequal in every way, we can flee from him. Hence, though an obstinate fight may be by a small force, in the end it must be captured by a larger force. Now the general is the bulwark of the state. If the bulwark is complete at all points, the state will be strong. If the bulwark is defective, the state will be weak. There are 3 ways in which a ruler can bring misfortune upon his army. Let's listen up. 1. By commanding the army to advance or to retreat, being ignorant of the fact that it cannot obey. This is called hobbling the army. 2. By attempting to govern an army in the same way as he administers a kingdom, being ignorant of the conditions which obtain in an army. This causes restlessness in the soldiers' minds. And then 3rd, by employing the officers of his army without discrimination, through ignorance of the military principle of adaptation to circumstances. This shakes the confidence in the soldiers. Okay, so I think when he says employing officers of the army without discrimination, so someone who's not as qualified, I think that's what he means. So let's use a Roman example. I need a centurion, right? My other centurion is dead. If I just get, okay, this guy was the one, he's pretty good at, archery. It's not very good with the gladius. And he's not that great with spears. But you know what? He compliments me a lot. Let me, oh, and his family's very wealthy. Let me promote him. The soldiers, as we can see when he says the military principles and that they can adapt to the circumstances, that the soldiers will be like, wait a minute, are we really, what? I'm not feeling too confident right now. But let's say you got a guy who's like, I've survived 7 battles. He's all scarred up, right? He's like, I've been shot with 3 arrows, still not dead, right? And he's like, and then the general's like, you're gonna be my centurion, my other centurion that fell, of Legion 12 or Legion 5, right? How many legions are in the army, right? To use the Roman example. The soldiers would be more like, yeah, I remember him. I fought beside this guy, man. He's got experience. So when they're charging, they'll be like, we got this guy by our side. Let's go in. So I can totally see how that would make sense. But when the army is restless and distrustful, trouble is sure to come from the other feudal princes. This is simply bringing anarchy into the army and flinging victory away. Thus we may know that there are 5 essentials for victory. 1. He will win who knows when to fight and when to not fight. 2. He will win who knows how to handle both superior and inferior forces. 3. He will win whose army is animated by the same spirit throughout all its ranks. Union, I think that's what he's talking about here. Union. You have something in common, right? If you have you got like 2,000 soldiers from this part, another 4,000 from this part, 7,000 from this part, and they are what's that word? Mercenaries? Not sell swords. Mercenaries. The people who you pay, you hire them, right? You hire all these different soldiers from companies. They're not tied to your homeland. They're not unified, right? They are not really together, and they're one's doing it for money, one's doing it for they want to defend their homeland. So I think that makes a lot of sense what he's saying right there. And he mentions throughout all the ranks, so you need the whole army on the same page, on the same mission. And then he continues, he will win who prepared himself, waits to take the enemy unprepared. So, patience is a virtue. You gotta know when to take the enemy, seek the opportunity, and not just charge in like the bull at any time because you want to flex. Brilliant stuff. He will win who has military capacity and is not interfered with by his sovereign. So, I think he's talking about a king. So, this could be very controversial because if the king is interfering too much with the actual soldiers' military plan, it could totally ruin everything. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. So we have to think about that. Today, that's totally different, though, family. Like, if you had, an army, and like today, you gotta have Congress. I mean, you can argue that's good or bad, but it's a little more complicated now than it was back then. So I can see why they would say the sovereign meaning the leader of the country, shouldn't decide the battle plans too much because they've grown up in the lap of luxury. They might not even have military experience. Therefore, they're not the ones to decide on what's the best road to go on military-wise, like fighting-wise. Diplomacy, maybe. But the actual battle, no. So, I think that's what he means, family. Such brilliant stuff here. I mean, he's such a brilliant guy. Hence the saying, if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained you will also suffer defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. Wow, so if you don't even know yourself, you haven't done self-reflection, you don't know what you're capable of, you don't know what your army is capable of, you don't know what your soldiers are capable of because you don't pay attention to your soldiers enough to know their minds, to know their spirits. And then you don't even know the enemy's culture very well, right? You don't know their training methods, their ideology, their land, the terrain, all about them. You don't know that, and you don't know your own very well, you're going to lose. I think that's what he's saying. So it's just brilliant stuff here. I mean, such a brilliant guy. What do you think, family? Have you ever read him? And if you haven't, this book is a simple read. It's just mind-blowing, and I love it. So, yeah.